Hello, so today I thought we'd make a start on our spineless journal. I've got some of the grey board strips which were in the kit, and one side is black, one side is just grey. They were designed for mounting school photographs on. I actually got these from a scrap store, which is a great, not too local to me, but fairly local resource. They actually let you go with a shopping trolley, and you can fill the shopping trolley with anything in particular rooms for £15. Or you can get a shopping basket for, I think it's £5. And they have absolutely stacks of this. They have stacks of the sort of not gold leaf, but gold foil that goes onto to make the lines around the school photographs. They have all sorts of things that you can recycle, and it saves things going to landfill, but it also is great for crafting because you get them at a reasonable cost. So I'm going to start by covering some of these on both sides. I want to do patterned paper on one side, which these are two out of the kit. There's a grid one which has got maps on the back, and then there's sort of a distressed one with a faint mark, but it's sort of a turquoisey colour because the theme of the Spineless journal is going to be sort of turquoises and vintage colours. So I'm going to turn this one so that I've got the side which I'm going to glue down, and then I'm going to glue onto here. So this is just heavy PVA, a really good strong PVA, and I'm going to put a good coat all the way along. Now do be aware, depending on what sort of PVA glue, the water content, etc., that some of your pages, as it were, might just bend and buckle a little. But if you put them under something flat, they'll straighten out. So let's have a look. I want this distressed edge. So I'm just going to go line that up with there, and that up with the bottom there, just a bit further up. Making sure it's all in contact with the glue. Press down really, really well. Then I'm going to, so I haven't got any glue along this edge, it hasn't spread out. I'm just going to cut roughly up to there and across, so that gets rid of the large piece of paper. So I'm dealing with a smaller piece now, and now I can just neaten it up. So I'm just going with my scissors right to the edge so that I get rid of the little tiny bit that's overlapping. If you have got glue seepage, don't forget to wipe your scissors. Or what you can do is do all one side of your strips, let them dry, trim them, and then do the other side. So there we are, that's that one done. Now as you can see, I've got a little tiny bit there, just overlapping. As you can see, it's bowing. Only a little bit, but it is. So what I'm going to do, seeing as I've got this strip out, I'm going to coat the other side with PVA. A reasonable amount. You want to make sure you go right to the edges so that it sticks the papers right to the very, very edges. You don't want any little bits that aren't stuck. And then I'm going to take some book pages Now my book pages don't reach right along. I don't particularly want this blank area, so I'm just going to trim that off. But I'm going to keep it. Trim along this line here at the top, but again keep it. And then I am going to pop that down so that it is onto the back. Again, I can trim this off. And our glue should still be wet, but I'll just add a little bit more in case. And then I'm going to go back in. It doesn't really matter if it's the right way up or not. Match up. Again, trim off. And any bits of the plane that you trim off, just keep them, because they are quite nice for stamping onto and then adding onto the project later. And obviously we'll keep this as well, because that will do for probably another 2 strips. So we've got the front with our patterned paper on. We've got the back with the book pages, which I'm going to trim off again. You can probably hear it's raining here. Not the best of days, but okay for filming. Alright, there we are. So we've got our front cover, as I like this as the front cover. I will set that aside to completely and utterly dry, to make sure it's dry on both sides, and then I will use just a sanding block to make sure that all my edges are nice and smooth. You can sand quite a bit and almost take it back to the white paper underneath, which I actually like. I like to see this edge. It's almost like giving it a border. It's better to do it when it is completely dry, because when it's wet you risk tearing the paper. But you can see the idea here. This has already got a distressed look to it because it's printed on the paper. But if I do that, it sort of continues it up. If you're worried about any particles, breathing in any particles of the board, the paper or the glue, do wear a mask. I would recommend it if you have asthma or any breathing problems. So you see the idea of just sanding it back. So what I will do is I will complete the other 9 of the strips, and then we will continue once they're all dry. I've got another 9 strips to do, with book pages on one side, patterned on the other, and then we'll go to the next step. So we've got our pages of our spineless journal, as it were, and they are all covered, some with just the lined paper, because then you can journal on those. We've got our front and back cover, which I've sanded the edges. That's those. And then we've got some with just the grid paper for journaling on, but also they've all got book pages on the back. And I'm going to show you how to do this, which is just applying a little bit of gesso and then a little bit of stamping to make them a bit more interesting before we add anything else. So I'll set those aside. I've got an old Holiday Inn card. You could use a store card, whatever you've got. You could also use a spatula. This is the least expensive thing to use. I've got some white gesso, doesn't matter what kind. It's just got a little bit of gesso on there. I'm just going to put a tiny bit on my mat, and it is really a tiny bit, you don't want much at all. And then I'm just going to pick a little bit up with my back of my credit card and just randomly dab it on. And I mean randomly. Don't be worried if you get a big blob, whatever, because you will be doing other things to these. It just breaks up the text and makes it so that it isn't sort of just, you don't read it as much. So that's one. Another one. And as you can see, sometimes I get a lot, sometimes I get a little. If you get a lot and there's too much, you can just scrape it off and just do it randomly. If you wanted to completely cover it with gesso, you could do. It's up to what you want to do. I just like random little bits like this. So there we are. Let's see if we've got any others that need doing. I'll do the backs of my front cover. Just be careful that you do wipe up any gesso underneath where you're going to be putting your front covers down. So I'll try not to move these and then I don't get gesso on the front covers. That's it, that's that one. Another front cover, and you'll see I've done 4 with just the smallest amount of gesso. And I will leave some with not so much gesso and some with more. There we are. So I'll put that aside. Just wipe this so it's all clean. Now ideally you would wait till these were all dry before you do the next step, but that's more or less dry. I'll show you what else I do. Doesn't matter if you have your text so you can read it or not. Sometimes I do it upside down so you don't read it. Doesn't really matter. And I've just got some distress ink in Vintage Photo. I do like to ink the edges. Just gives a more aged look to the pages, and you would obviously wait till it was properly dry. I'm going to do that with all the front and back cover and also all the inside pages. I'll then choose just a random stamp. This is an indigo blue one, but you can have any you want. Actually, there's a nice one with numbers from indigo blue. This actually is a red rubber one, but it does come in the mixed media pack and it's a nice one to use. Just get a little bit of ink on it. I always seem to get this upside down, so I better check. And then randomly add a little bit of stamping. Doesn't have to be all over and it doesn't have to be perfect. You can do this in distress ink in the Vintage Photo. You can also do it with black archival. I'll do some with black archival and then you'll see as well. Right way up for the stamp. There we are. So that's the 2 options. And then I will ink the edges of this one as well. Good job I checked that's not quite dry. But I'm just adding a little bit of age to the edges by just inking them up. I won't go too much further because the top edge is wet. This is why it's important to let things dry. So there we are. So that is one of our front covers, and an inside page, which again I will ink up. You can go as much as you want with the inking. You can do it all over like this to give it a really, really aged look. I tend to have not a great deal of ink on my sponge so that I don't get big smears of ink, but you get the idea. So you've got your front cover, and then these are your inside pages.